The red tunnel lights flashed across my daughter's face as she whispered, "Mama, they said you'd never find me." My heart froze, but my mind didn't. I turned on the recorder. Every word becoming evidence. That night wasn't an ending. It was the reckoning. The rain started before dawn, soft against my window like a familiar rhythm. I sat in the dim light of my kitchen, kettle humming, the scent of lemon polish still hanging from yesterday's cleaning. It was habit more than hunger that brought me here, my quiet hour before the world demanded explanations. The phone on the counter vibrated once. Unknown number. I didn't answer. At my age, you learn peace comes from letting certain things ring unanswered. Still, when the voicemail icon blinked, curiosity slipped its way in. I pressed play and froze. The voice was thin, distant, but I'd have known it anywhere. "Mom, can you hear me?" Naomi's voice. My Naomi, gone 18 years. For a heartbeat, the air thickened like it did that morning. They told me her car had gone off the bridge. I closed my eyes and whispered to no one, "Lord, not today." The sound of rain mixed with something metallic outside, maybe the freight line that runs near the river. I hit replay, turned up the volume, trying to find static patterns. Any proof this was a prank. It wasn't. I'd memorized her breath once. Every lilt and pause from bedtime stories to choir solos, that voice was hers. I poured my tea with shaking hands and grabbed a notepad. Old nurses don't forget procedure. Document first. Feel later. I wrote the time. 4:03 a.m. The call length, 42 seconds, and the phrase, "Mom, can you hear me?" Then I texted the notes to myself, creating a time-stamped record. When morning stretched across the blinds, I called Savannah PD's non-emergency line. "Ma'am, I'm reporting a possible distress call from a missing person," I said. Deputy Mercer took the report, his voice too casual, like he'd heard every ghost story in town. "Phone spoof all the time, ma'am," he told me, slow and patronizing. "Probably a scam." "Deputy," I said evenly. "I logged triage calls for 30 years. I'm reporting a person in distress." He sighed, typing loud enough for me to hear. "I'll mark it as information only. Maybe follow up with your grief counselor?" "Thank you," I said, ending the call before my anger got the better of me. I wasn't going to be dismissed like some hysterical widow. I printed the log and stapled it to a manila folder labeled Naomi, 4 o'clock a.m., the way I used to tag patient charts. By afternoon, I'd mapped my next moves. Rule 1, speak softly. Document loudly. Rule 2, don't tell family until I control the story. People love to correct you until your receipts start talking. I listed tasks, trace the number, check cemetery cameras, walk the riverfront cafes for that train horn sound. My tote sat by the door with a recorder, notebook, and copies of everything. I left the originals in my firebox. Phone set to auto backup. The sun had gone down again when I stepped onto the porch. The air smelled like wet azaleas. That's when I noticed the shoe prints, small, toe-in, like Naomi's ballet stance when she was 10. Beside them lay a single camellia, petals slick from mist, a faint thumbprint smeared with coffee on one leaf. I sealed it in a sandwich bag, dated it. Nurse habits kicking in like muscle memory. Then the streetlight flickered. The freight horn moaned again. Closer this time. My phone buzzed, a voicemail with no caller ID. I pressed play. Ragged breathing filled the line, followed by that same whisper. "Mom, listen." I looked out toward the empty street. Kettle whistling behind me, the voicemail still playing. Then my phone screen flashed a photo I had never taken. Naomi sitting at a cafe that didn't exist 20 years ago. The rain hadn't stopped. It only softened into mist as dawn crept across Savannah. I sat at my kitchen table with Naomi's picture pulled up again, the cafe that shouldn't exist. The timestamp burned into my screen, 3:58 a.m. I pinched the image wider. Her face was older, but that same shy tilt of her head lingered. My hands shook, not from fear this time, but focus. "All right, baby," I whispered. "Let's separate noise from truth." I replayed the voicemail on speaker, writing every sound phonetically. "Mom, I don't have much time." Breath, static, faint horn. I double-checked the photo's metadata. The GPS tag pinged near Whitaker and Park. only 3 blocks away. No image file in my roll. No shutter log, like the photo had drifted into my phone from thin air. I slid on my rain jacket, packed my small evidence kit, and sent a text to my landline. Leaving house. 6:12 a.m. Digital breadcrumbs secured. At my age, I murmured, locking the door. You don't chase shadows. You walk the block and see what the light reveals. The air outside smelled of river damp and diesel. When I reached the cafe, Edison bulbs still glowed from last night's closing. The name read, Bean and Verse. Opened in 2018, city sticker confirmed. I took a wide photo, then another matching Naomi's angle. Same chipped brick. Same planner. Inside. A young barista smiled through steam. Plain coffee, please. None of that fancy stuff today. Baby. She laughed, poured, and when I asked if she'd seen anyone here around 4, her brows furrowed. Yeah, a woman stood outside before we opened, kept checking a flip phone. Weird, right? Did she look nervous? I asked. Like she expected someone who never showed. I noted the line of sight to the freight tracks. That horn could have echoed straight through. I left my old VA letterhead request with the manager to preserve footage. Honey, memory's sugar, I told them. Facts are protein. I'm here for protein. The manager chuckled but promised to pull the tape. Stepping back out, I held my phone to match the reflection in the cafe window. My porch light lined up perfectly. Whoever took Naomi's picture had been near my home. I drove next to Riverside Cemetery. Rain traced silver lines across Naomi's gravestone, and there, a fresh bouquet of camellias tied with a coffee-stained ribbon. Behind the vase lip sat a glossy photo. Naomi at the same cafe, date stamped last month. My breath caught. I gloved up, bagged it, marked position N1. The groundskeeper shuffled over. Seen her a few times, he said, scratching his beard. Quiet girl, comes at dawn, gone before I get my truck started. I scanned the ground, no deep heel marks, just light toe-in steps like Naomi's dancer's gait. I collected soil, labeled the vials, and thanked him. The flickering security light above mirrored my own streetlight stutter. Back in my car, heater humming, I called Naomi's old carrier. This line should be dead, and I said. The young agent repeated policy until I gave him timestamps, duration, and voicemail proof. 10 minutes later, a supervisor joined, hesitant. There's an auto-pay token still running, he admitted. It keeps the account in a suspended active state. I leaned closer to the phone. Whose bank funds it? Can't disclose names, ma'am, he said. But the routing prefix matches a Savannah institution. Descriptor starts Grace Mem, then cuts off. Grace Memorial Church, I whispered. He didn't confirm. But silence can say plenty. Folks like to bury the body and keep the paperwork breathing. He emailed me a redacted confirmation. Back home, I spread a paper map. Cafe, cemetery, my porch, Grace Memorial, all within a 15-minute circle. The freight schedule fit the call's timing perfectly. I wrote my next moves. Collect footage, preserve records, cross-check donors. I placed Naomi's graduation photo beside the new one. If you're out there, baby, I said softly. Keep walking. Mama's not done yet. Just before noon, my phone rang, the cafe manager. Miss Duval, we found something on the footage. You want to see this? I hurried back. On the monitor, frozen at 3:57 a.m., stood a woman in a hood. The wind lifted it for a second, revealing Naomi's face, older, tired, but hers. She lifted a flip phone, looked toward the street, and the reflection of my porch light glimmered behind her. When the freight horn blared, she mouthed one word, Mom. Grace Memorial smelled of lemon oil and guilt. The new marble floors shone bright enough to see my reflection. Neat hair, pressed blouse, eyes calm but sharp. I carried my tote like a peace offering. Morning, Pastor Strathmore, I said, all sugar. Thought I'd balance some old books for you. Miley's. The secretary froze mid-typing, her phone trembling as she called inside. The pastor appeared. Smile tight, hands clasped like he was blessing himself. Mrs. Duval, what a surprise. I glanced around. Quite the renovation, I said softly. Funny how generosity grows on certain graves. His knuckles whitened. When I mentioned a legacy account from 2004 tied to my daughter's number, his Adam's apple jumped. Private benevolence, he muttered. Private money using dead people's data, I said, leaning closer. Ain't benevolence, Reverend. It's laundering with hymns. He ended our meeting fast. We'll look into it, he said. Already turning away, sweat darkened the collar of his robe. As I left, Mela slipped a folded sheet into my palm. Not everything here is holy, she whispered. That evening, thunder rolled low, and my son Malcolm showed up wearing his best apologetic smile. He kissed my cheek, the air thick with expensive cologne. Mom, maybe it's time to downsize. Let me handle your estate. Keep things simple. Handle, I repeated, pouring him tea. That word's got a habit of grabbing what don't belong. He chuckled, sliding forms across the table. Just a family trust, he said, voice honey smooth. The fine print showed the trustee, Grace Memorial Community Development Fund. I felt my chest tighten. So the same church reaching into Naomi's grave was now reaching into my house. I smiled back. Steady as porcelain. Baby, I'd rather sign these at the bank tomorrow. They've got better pens. He left relieved, thinking I was compliant. When the door shut, I whispered, paper cuts deeper than knives when written by kin. Later. I walked next door to Arlene Broussard's porch. She was trimming roses, humming an old hymn. You ever deal with Grace Memorial? Arlene? Her shears stopped. Child, that church buried more secrets than it saved. She told me about that night. Flashing lights, sirens, and men in church robes loading a stretcher from behind the building, not toward the hospital. I saw a van with their logo, taped over, she said. And I swear, I heard a girl scream, Mom. Right before that train horn. I asked to record her account. She nodded. Let truth have a voice before memory forgets. Before I left, she pressed my wrist. Don't trust a man of God who drives a German car on Sunday. Back home, I spread everything on my table. Miley's code sheet, Malcolm's papers, Arlene's story. The routing code matched the same one funding Naomi's old number. I exhaled slowly. We play chess, not checkers, I told myself. I drafted a letter to my attorney for a forensic audit and mailed it certified. I copied every form and stored the originals under my floor safe. You don't yell at snakes, I said, sealing the envelope. You label the jar. At dawn, an envelope slid under my door. My unsigned property forms were inside, stamped void in red ink. A note read, Stop digging, or the next grave won't be empty. My phone buzzed. A voicemail from Naomi's number. I pressed play. My pulse, steady now. A man's voice whispered, Mom, you shouldn't have gone to the church. I pulled up to Grace Memorial just before sunset. The air was thick with humidity and incense from the afternoon service. I walked in steady, toad on my shoulder, my smile polite but cold enough to frost glass. Evening, Reverend. I thought I'd reconcile some old donor ledgers. I said. The word reconcile made him twitch. Malis buzzed me through the inner door, her eyes carrying the kind of warning a good woman gives when she can't say it out loud. Strathmore lingered by the stairwell, claiming he was headed to a hospital visit, yet his shoes didn't move an inch. I need ledgers from 2004 through 2010, I said. Tone level? Especially the benevolent subledgers, the ones marked for phone outreach. He smiled too long. Those records are private. Mrs. Duval. I figured you'd say that, I replied, laying my printed carrier email in the USB request from the cafe. So I've already filed a preservation notice. The postmark talks when people won't. That cracked his composure. His voice slipped. You should let sleeping saints lie. I met his gaze. Steady. The living still get bills. He sighed and told Milas to escort me down to the basement. The key trembled in her hand as the old door creaked open. The fluorescent lights flickered to life, showing a line of labeled boxes and dust motes swirling like incense smoke. I began photographing the binders. Year of fund code, subcategories. One ledger caught my eye. Duplicate entries. Same date and amount, listed under 2 accounts. Community Mobile Ministry, and bereavement communications both carried a routing fragment identical to Naomi's phone token. "Who's a mess?" I asked, pointing at initials scribbled in the margin. "Malcolm Strathmore," Myla said quietly. "Pastor's nephew. RS is Randall, the part-time bookkeeper." I flipped another page. A memo stapled to the corner read, "Donor anonymity via trust," the same phrasing printed on my son's family fund, I whispered. "Paper remembers," and snapped photos of every sheet. When I asked about who distributed the phones, Malis led me to a cabinet marked Pantry Program. A checkout sheet listed serial numbers of donated flip phones. One IMEI matched the timestamp from the cafe footage. The contact note chilled me. "Meets at Steeple Door 3, 4 a.m. Another line said, "Return to Porter's mother if found." "Who's in Porter?" I asked. "Naomi Porter Duval?" she breathed. Her voice cracked. "We thought it was safety outreach. Maybe it started that way," I said, "but it sure didn't end wholly." She printed the log and the volunteer roster, glancing nervously toward the stairwell. The moment we heard footsteps, Pastor Strathmore appeared again, voice raised. "This is confidential material." I laid out my findings, ledger duplicates, the IME printout, the payment trace. "You serve the least of these," I said. "So why route through my daughter's grave?" His face reddened. "You're slandering the church. Truth is a defense." "Reverend," I replied, sliding my folder closed, "and certified mail already left the post office." He tried to snatch the papers. I pulled them back. "Chain of custody stays with me. If a girl cried, Mom, under your steeple," I said, voice quiet but sharp as glass. "That wasn't ministry, it was bondage. He ordered me out." As Milas turned away, she brushed my hand and slipped something small into it, a thumb drive. Outside, the night was cooling fast. I walked to the City Hall annex, heels clicking against the concrete, and filed a preservation notice for Grace Memorial's financials and Riverside Cemetery. Lighting logs. When I caught my reflection in the annex window, another silhouette stood across the street, hooded, still. I turned, but the sidewalk was empty. My phone buzzed. No caller ID. I hit speaker. A whisper came through, trembling and low. "Mom, don't come alone. He takes phones at the pantry door." Then wind, a horn, silence. I looked up at the steeple rising against the dark sky, thumb drive warm in my palm. If what's on it matched the ledgers, Thursday wouldn't be for prayer. Friday morning, sunlight poured through my blinds like it didn't know the war had started. I dressed neat, navy slacks, pressed blouse, and drove to First Coastal Bank to wire my attorney's retainer. The teller smiled until she saw her screen. "Miss Duval, I'm so sorry. There's a hold on your accounts." The manager appeared with that slow, careful tone they use for difficult customers. He slid a memo across the desk. "Risk alert, concerns for diminished capacity. Filed by family representative." Malcolm's name burned off the page. I kept my voice Sunday quiet. "Then pull the notice and the authorizing document," I read before I raised my voice. He fumbled papers. The file cited a pending conservatorship petition, co-supported by Grace Memorial Community Development. I laid down my notarized power of attorney. "Locking my money while you look into it is elder abuse by policy," I said evenly. "Put counsel on speaker." After 10 tense minutes, bank counsel approved a partial release for legal fees. I pocketed the receipt, photographed every page, and dated the chain of custody in my notebook. At the courthouse, the clerk's window buzzed under tired fluorescent lights. She found the petition, filed late last night. Petitioner, Malcolm Duval, supporting declaration, Pastor Strathmore. The text painted me grief-impaired, obsessed with phantom calls and delusions of fraud. Exhibits showed the transfer forms Malcolm had brought to my kitchen, cropped so the red void mark no longer showed. I asked for copies, then filed my objection in motion to dismiss stapling proof, my clean cognitive screen, certified mail receipts, and photographs of the church ledgers. The clerk leaned in, whispering, "They try this with widows all the time. Bring your ducks in a row." I smiled. "Mine already march." Back home. The blows kept coming. My utilities app pinged. Billing address changed to a church P.O. box. I reverted it. Screenshot taken. A courier arrived with a wellness visit notice signed by a church deacon. I called my attorney on speaker, documenting every word. Then I inventoried what mattered. Deed, insurance, the thumb drive. I cloned it onto 2 micro SD cards, one taped inside my pantry light fixture, one mailed overnight to counsel. "Arlene," I said over the phone, "you mind being my porch witness?" She chuckled. "Honey, I'll sit out there with sweet tea and my phone camera. Let them smile for Facebook Live." My doctor faxed a line straight to the court, patient-oriented X3, no cognitive impairment. It felt like armor. I plugged in the thumb drive, computer offline, 3 folders, Benev_2005-2008, pantry phones _graveyard shift, donor trusts, routing numbers connected the church accounts to the same family trust Malcolm pushed on me. 1 audio file, 3:57 a.m. _alley wav, played faint sobbing, a train horn, and a man's whisper. "Phone, stay with me." My breath steadied. I printed a summary, signed and sealed it. Late afternoon, the probate clerk called. "Hearing set Wednesday, 9 a.m. I pinned the notice to my fridge like a battle flag. Then came a slow, deliberate knock. Through the peephole stood Malcolm, folder in hand, Pastor Strathmore beside him, smiling like a man at communion. I slid the chain, hit record on my phone. "Gentlemen," I said, calm as stone, "this house takes appointments." Malcolm grinned. That same boyish look he used when lying about broken windows. "Then pencil us in, Mama. We're here to help." The parking lot shimmered under a humid orange sky as floodlights buzzed over Grace Memorial's parking lot. My heels clicked against the pavement like slow applause. Arlene Booker walked beside me, calm and sharp, her silver curls glinting beneath the lights. My attorney, Holden Pierce, carried the binder of exhibits like scripture. The church had called a community board meeting, but I knew it was a trap dressed up as fellowship. Inside, banners screamed "Building Hope," the door campaign. The glossy posters showed smiling faces and donation totals, and at the bottom, in bold print, my name, Marvina Duval, legacy donor. I stopped mid-aisle. "Without permission," I whispered. "Always without permission." Holden's mouth tightened. On stage, Malcolm sat between church elders, polished and proud, an empty chair waiting beside them. A paper sign taped to its back read "Marvina," testimony. That word alone carried the poison, implying confusion, instability, fragility. I leaned toward Holden. "We stay 3 steps ahead, smile and document." He nodded, thumb pressing the recorder app as the crowd hushed. The moderator began with a syrupy prayer, then a speech about our dear sister's recent difficulties. Murmurs rippled through the pews. Neighbors, former choir mothers, all watching. I raised my hand. The moderator ignored me until Holden stood and cited the Georgia Open Meetings Act. The mic scraped across the table. I stood tall. "Thank you for your concern," I said evenly. "Let's review what love looks like on paper." From my tote, I laid out the deed scans, donation receipts, and the void-stamped property transfer. Faces leaned forward, curiosity replacing pity. "This freeze notice," I continued, "lists Grace Memorial as co-supporter in my son's petition to take control of my accounts. Conflict of interest, anyone?" Gasps. I held up the printed ledger sheet from my thumb drive, lines of duplicate entries connecting building fund to Duval Family Trust. Pastor Strathmore smiled his rehearsed smile. "Clerical routing only." "Clerical theft wears Sunday shoes," I said softly, letting the words sink. Malcolm rose, voice dripping concern. "My mother's confused. Grief has made her paranoid." I unfolded Dr. Greer's note and held it high. "Oriented ×3, signed, sealed, faxed today." Arlene's phone streamed everything. Comments rolled in. "Let her talk, show the proof. That's her son." The tide turned in seconds. Then I played the audio. Naomi's faint whisper, the long cry of a freight train, a man's low voice. "Phone, stay with me." The auditorium froze. I projected the cell tower map, Naomi's number pinging near Magnolia Cemetery, 4:02 a.m. Then a still image, Rowan Kipp handing a tote of burner phones to a deacon on the loading dock. Rowan stammered, "That was outreach for the homeless." "Outreach," I said. "That requires dead girl phones?" The audience gasped again. "Here's the timestamp." I continued. "Same hour Malcolm swore he was with Pastor." His phone was 2 miles from that cemetery. Holden rose smoothly. "Motion to preserve all CCTV and phone logs has been served. Any deletion after tonight is criminal spoliation." Silence. Then I went live on my own channel. Within a minute, the viewer count jumped past 800, mostly retirees from Savannah's South Side, women who had sung beside me for decades. Comments filled the screen. "We stand with you. Sister Marvina." Pastor Strathmore reached for the mic, but Detective Lacey Brandt entered from the back, badge catching the light. I read from my folder the statute protecting seniors from financial coercion, while Holden handed me a faxed TRO, signed by the on-call judge. I read every name aloud. Malcolm Duval, Pastor Elias Strathmore, Grace Memorial agents. Gasps, murmurs, cell phones lifted to film. A deacon tried to block Arlene's lens. "Georgia's a one-party consent state, sugar," she said sweetly. I served copies of the TRO to the moderator, my hands steady. Strathmore lunged for the microphone, shouting about slander, but the crowd's chant drowned him out. "Where's Naomi? Where's Naomi?" Malcolm snapped. "You're ruining my life," he screamed. Shoving the podium, security stepped in. Detective Brandt raised her voice. "All devices stay in this room, now." Outside, the night felt different, cooler, sharp with truth. Rowan hurried after me. "We only did what Pastor told us," he pleaded. "The camera already heard you." I replied. Holden handed me the evidence receipt. "We'll file at dawn." I walked to Malcolm's car and placed a single white lily on the hood. "A mother never stops seeing her child," I whispered, "even when he hides behind the pulpit." Arlene started the Buick, and I turned toward the glowing steeple. My live stream still ran. Thousands were watching now. "If you've ever felt small in a room full of power," I told them, "borrow my voice tonight." Then my phone buzzed. A text. Naomi's face, red-eyed, alive, holding today's Savannah Times. The caption read, "Mom, hurry." Timestamp, 9:11 p.m. Location, Magnolia Cemetery. Sunday morning sunlight crawled across my kitchen table, glinting off stacks of paper like armor. My phone buzzed before the kettle whistled. Holden's voice came through, clipped but triumphant. "All evidence mirrored overnight. 2 law firms, 3 vault backups. They can't bury this now." I stirred my coffee. Let the steam steady me. Detective Brandt texted next. "Noon exhumation approved for Magnolia Cemetery. Chain of custody forms already pre-filled. Facebook seniors had turned me into a headline. Widow outsmarts church in live broadcast." I didn't read the comments long. Applause fades, but signatures last. Arlene arrived with breakfast and her usual battlefield calm. "Eat first, win later," she said, sliding me grits and a honey biscuit. We mapped the day, cemetery, bank, HOA, then back to the church, before leaving. I filmed a short statement. "If you have information about burner phones tied to Grace Memorial, contact Detective Lacey Brandt. Truth loves sunlight." I folded Naomi's old choir robe into my tote, soft, faded, and stubbornly whole. I didn't carry it like grief. I carried it like a promise. At Magnolia, mist hovered low, curling around the iron gates. Detective Brandt greeted me with a clipboard in the tone of someone who had stopped doubting. I signed the custody line. The text lifted a small box sealed years ago under Pauper Adjunct Interment. The label didn't match the cemetery index. Brandt narrated each step for her body cam. "Truth breathes better when it's procedural," I told her. Inside the vault lay a plastic-wrapped bundle, flowers, a rusted locket, and a phone wrapped in paper towels. The engraving on the locket read E.D. "W? Not Naomi." Brandt raised her brow. I just nodded. "Go on." The text slid the SIM into a reader. Ping. Same burner lot as the church's outreach nights. The timestamps fit Naomi's disappearance window. The DNA swab came next. The lab called within the hour. Female. Not Duval lineage. Naomi's grave was a lie, I whispered. Then find the living. My voice didn't shake. It sharpened. By afternoon, we were at Savannah Coastal Bank. The manager tried the velvet glove delay. Routine security holds. Holden dropped the TRO, a UCC1 filing, and a stare that could melt marble. The speakerphone crackled as HOA counsel joined in, citing community protection. Arlene flipped through their own bylaws, reading aloud their breach of trust clause. Silence spread like ink. The freeze lifted within minutes. Written confirmation followed. I asked for SAR reference numbers. Manager blinked, then handed them over. That was the sound of power remembering its manners. Outside, I bought a small bouquet of lilies for Naomi's empty chair, not victory, permission to hope again. We stopped by Grace Memorial. Volunteers were removing my name from the donor list. One elderly woman clasped my hand. God sees the books too, baby. I smiled, tired. I'm counting on it. I filed a preservation demand for all device inventories. Holden photographed the stamped receipt. A mother approached, voice trembling. My daughter gave the church her old flip phone for a mission drive. That was the same week your Naomi disappeared. I thanked her and passed the lead to Brant. We don't argue with pulpits. I told Arlene. We audit them. By dusk, the unknown number buzzed again. A grainy video. Naomi on a stairwell, whispering. Safe at dusk. Behind her, tiles with a faded anchor logo. Arlene cross-referenced. Riverfront Utility Annex. Holden confirmed. Same anchor design from City Maintenance Archives. 1982. I stared at the screen. Naomi. Mama's coming careful. We built the plan. Brant's team above ground, me waiting until she cleared entry. Arlene loaded my tote with pepper spray and a flashlight. For sermons only, she quipped. I laughed once. Too thin. Before heading out, I recorded a memo. No blame, baby. We just walk home different. I texted Malcolm one sentence. Truth's the only bridge left. Read receipt. No reply. Night settled blue along the river. Brant's voice crackled over comms. Position set. We move slow. Arlene kept the car idling. I clipped Naomi's robe inside my tote. The burner phone buzzed once. Our signal. I stepped toward the annex. Flashlight dark. The tunnel smelled of rust and wet paper. Then came a voice. Low and urgent. Hurry, she's got people. Not Malcolm, not Rowan. Someone else. New hands in an old crime. I touched the robe's hem. Mama's here, I whispered, voice steady as prayer. A phone light blinked twice beneath the yellow pipe. A shadow stepped between me and it. The steel door slammed, echoing down the tunnel. The lights turned red. I lifted my hands and said, calm as judgment. You're going to move, and I'm going to take my daughter. The red tunnel lights burned like low, warning suns. I stood square to the shadow near the yellow pipe. Voice calm, hands high. This is Marvina Duval, I said clearly. I am lawfully present under an active TRO. My phone, deep in my tote, blinked twice. Holden's auto-upload already live to the cloud. The man lunged. I pivoted, one short burst of pepper spray, then shouted, Move! A small voice behind the light rasped. Mama! Naomi's face, pale and real, wavered through the red. Arlene's fob cut the side gate open. Officers poured in. Hands! Hands! Echoed down the metal walls. I dropped to my knees, wrapped the choir robe around my daughter, whispering, Breathe through the sting, baby. Follow my voice. The man threw down a phone bundle before he hit the ground. Brant's team bagged it while we climbed toward the hatch. Inside the EMS van, Naomi sipped electrolytes, trembling but present. I mirrored her breathing. 4 in, 6 out. Doctor. Greer's voice came through the speaker. Name 5 things you see, Naomi whispered. Light, blanket, you. I held her gaze. She told us the truth piece by piece, how the mission drives gathered old phones, how a man moved her whenever donor checks cleared. They said helping would let you heal. I met her eyes. No one writes our healing, sweetheart. Brant confirmed the attacker wasn't Malcolm or Rowan, someone hired between them. Holden texted that the victim's rights petition was filed before midnight. Naomi's fingers hooked my sleeve the way she used to when crossing the street. I felt myself steady in that small wait. At the precinct, Holden unlocked the mirrored drive. Files titled Memorial Healing Fund filled the screen. Deposit dates matching every freeze on my accounts. Another folder played AI-stitched videos using Naomi's voice, pleading for release. "Let me go." "Mom." My stomach clenched. The timestamp matched the church's last donation blast. Metadata pointed straight to Grace Memorial's router and Rowan Kipp's login. "They counterfeited my child's voice to monetize my grief," I said. Flat and final. Brant signed new warrants, servers, routers, and the paralegal's home office, seized before dawn. Holden filed civil suits while Brant's team rolled the evidence out of the church basement. Photos showed deacons frozen in disbelief. I gave a short live-stream statement refusing all donations, asking witnesses to contact Brant. The bank issued a public apology. HOA suspended its director. I called Malcolm. "Stand with truth or stay outside this house." The click that followed sounded like judgment itself. By dawn, Naomi and I sat on my porch. She held the robe folded across her lap while we opened the fake locket from the cemetery. Someone else's staged keepsake. I laid out her original birth certificate and an affidavit to restore her legal name. We signed together. Holden filed it immediately. "Naomi Peace Duval," she said, testing the syllables. I repeated them until they settled in the air. Brant texted, "Strathmore and Kipp in custody, the paralegal cooperating. They don't get to narrate us anymore," I whispered. That morning, I set boundaries like tableware, one piece at a time. Arlene filtered the phone calls, dropped off casseroles, guarded the door. Naomi's room aired out, sheets washed, sunlight pooling where sorrow had slept. We mapped therapy sessions with Dr. Greer, one for her, one for me, one for us. I boxed every record and labeled it, "Truth we can reach for." Near noon. Naomi lifted her mug. "Can we watch the river?" We stepped outside together, steam rising into pale gold light. The world didn't owe us calm, but it offered a quiet corner. My phone buzzed again. A text. "I was part of the mission drive. I can show where the rest went." Naomi met my eyes. "Steady now." I typed back. "We don't do this alone anymore. Meet with Detective Brant." The river shimmered silver, like it was taking witness. Some stories end, others get audited. Naomi's phone buzzed again, an unmarked number. Same tone, same pause before a voice whispered, "They're still running the drive." "Mama, check the river vault." The line cut. I looked toward the shimmering water, heart steady but burning. Some rescues end in light, others begin again in the dark.